Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the intro. And please
Oh,
just
so can you
let
hear
me
me?
know if I can. Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yes, I can, loud and clear.
Is the sound okay?
The
Okay,
sound is
great. Just
fine.
let me know if there are any problems. Thank you.
All right.
Great. Okay, so sure. Going back many years, I studied photography, and I think I had a look at and applied for a few jobs, and nothing really captured my imagination. But I was offered a position lecturing at a new institution in South Africa, and it was fun setting up a photography department from scratch. And within that department, we taught photography to a lot of different programs. For instance, public relations. We had a pure photography course. We taught to fine art students, graphic design students, fashion students. And I developed a passion for education, and I still feel, although I've left education and done a few other things, I still feel it's a worthwhile career and thing to do, is to educate students and to, ultimately transform their lives, because education can make such a significant difference in somebody's life. And I think
Yeah, I agree.
I've taught a bit in America as well, where I want to say access to education is a lot easier. And
Okay.
I think in South Africa, certainly, providing students with an education, even if it's a 1-year course, and certainly the research backs this up, can make a substantial difference in their lives and in their families' lives. So,
Yeah.
as I say, I think it's something worthwhile. I've taught photography at a number of different institutions in South Africa and while I was in America. And as I say, to students who study all sorts of things, from agriculture to library science. It's a nice common ground that you often share with people, is taking photographs and showing photographs. So that's always
Yeah.
it's been a fun topic for me. I've taught other subjects as well, but it's mostly been around photography. I
So
joined
basically,
Inscape in 2016, and I
okay.
think one of my interests in joining Inscape was because it had such a reputation as being an innovative institution that does things a little bit differently to many other institutions. So I've worked in
Okay.
institutions that were government funded, what we call public institutions in South Africa, and also in
Right.
private institutions. And Inscape is a private institution, so the funding for classes for paying lecturers comes purely from student fees. There's no government funding.
Okay.
But it really is an institution that does things a little bit differently, where the people who work there are passionate about education. They're really forward looking, and our management and the staff in general is really not scared to take on, I want to say, tasks that are significant and important in the world. So
Mm.
I think we make a difference in student lives, and that's really why I'm back in education and enjoying education.
Fantastic. All right. So I was almost going to ask if you set up the photography department in Inscape. I know Inscape started in 1981, but you started there in 2016, and you oversee the
Correct.
5 campuses. You oversee 5 campuses, each running 10 programs. Can you tell us the campuses? I know there's one in Pretoria, there's one in Johannesburg. Can you tell us the other places where the
Yes.
campuses are?
So Inscape has a campus in Durban, Stellenbosch, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Pretoria. Yeah, so those are the 5 campuses, quite spread out. And Pretoria is where I'm based. It's also where the head office is based. It's the biggest campus. But we have relatively small student numbers, and we keep our classes very small. So we have a maximum of 24 students in a class.
Okay. When you say in a class, you mean in a program or in a class?
No, we might have, let's say if we have 40 students, then that group would be split into two classes. So any one time in a studio where students are learning, there would only be a maximum of 24 students.
Okay. And is there a particular reason for this? Though I know that when the students are kept smaller, there is more attention is paid to each student. So is that the reason why the classes are this small?
Yeah, in reality, all education theory proves that small classes have better success rates. So students do better and I think in design education, there's a lot of individual attention that is required when students are, especially if they're working on practical assignments. So let's say in fashion, if someone is drawing up a pattern, it's a huge advantage for the lecturer to be able to work with each individual student, and also for students I always try and encourage students to listen in on if the lecturer is giving feedback to one of your peers, you can learn from that experience as well. So a small class facilitates that.
Okay, so what does your job entail as Chief Academic Officer? What does it entail?
So I'm in charge of all of the academic side of the institution, and that means really making sure that each campus has what it needs, whether that be a curriculum. So we centrally design the whole structure of the curriculum. We have all of our courseware online. So we have an online learner management platform that all the students and the lecturers access. My job is also to ensure that we are registered with the Department of Higher Education and Training. If we develop new programs, then my job is to make sure that the correct designs for those programs with all the documentation is submitted to the Council on Higher Education. So higher education is very regulated in South Africa. There are 3 bodies that we have to keep happy. And that in order to continue functioning as an educational institution. So that's really my job, is to make sure we have really good products, that whatever happens in the classroom is of good quality, and that we keep all of our registrations and so on current and up to date.
Okay. So, well, the focus of this interview is really about fashion, because we're fashion creatives in this group.
Yes.
Now, I particularly love the fashion scene in South Africa. I think it's very rich, and I think that the reason why it's so beautiful is because the resources are there and the environment is there for designers and creatives, fashion creatives, to really express themselves. Now, I know that one of the courses, or some of the courses that you run at Inscape, are fashion courses. So, how has let me start with this. Who are the biggest designers in South Africa today, and how has Inscape contributed to enabling this interesting fashion scene in South Africa?
Okay, and I think probably what I need to say is we run 2 fashion programs. One program is a 1-year, and I want to say a sort of foundational course. It is at a level where students, for instance, who haven't done very well in high school can do this program in order to continue with a diploma or a degree. Or they could spend a year doing the fashion program and go out into the industry at sort of entry level, or start their own business. It really is up to them. And then we have a 3-year, what we call a Bachelor of Design. So the Bachelor of Design, we were the first institution in South Africa to offer a Bachelor of Design, as opposed to a BA. The Bachelor of Design is quite common in the rest of the world, but not very common in South Africa. And in that program, the students do a common first year, which is very design thinking orientated, skills orientated. And then in their second and third year, they move into a pure fashion program. So with the appropriate courses there. South Africa does have a very dynamic fashion environment. And I think, we have some designers who are big names in South Africa, some designers who've moved out of South Africa into international markets. I think for me, the interesting designers at the moment are really people who are looking at the changing world of fashion. And this is also something we commissioned a company to really do a full investigation into fashion in South Africa and the change and, things like the issues of fast fashion and how clothes and textiles are disposed of, and the wastage and things like that are things I think that Inscape is concerned about, but I'll probably chat a little bit more about that at a later stage. I think just, the people who are out there at the moment, I don't want to say there's a fashion brand called Stone Cherry who's been very successful. And I think in South Africa, often success relates to having your line of clothing or your brand being picked up by one of the big retail companies. Now, the big retail companies in South Africa have, unfortunately, with COVID, taken a bit of knock. But companies like Edcon, Foschini's, Truworths, if your brand was taken up by them and sold in their shops, they're a nationwide. In fact, I think some of them are probably spread into SADC regions. These are companies, even Mr. Price, which maybe is a lower end, cheaper kind of brand. If your clothes are being sold there, then you have great exposure. And that, I suppose, in South African terms is very much success. Yes, there are people who go overseas and become successful there. But I think people like Tetira Mashigo, who are very true to their roots in South Africa, to their culture, and yet are making a success of what they design and getting it distributed and getting it out there. Anisa Mapungwe, who's originally from Tanzania, and I had the pleasure she was one of my lecturers at a previous institution, wonderful, studied in South Africa at that institution and also in London. She's got, it was just, Inscape, for instance, brings a lot of active designers in to teach. So having somebody like, she didn't teach at Inscape, but she taught at another institution, having somebody like that in the studio to teach students is the strategy that we use at Inscape as well. So that is wonderful to have those kind of people working directly with the students, giving them insight into their day-to-day running of a business, how they achieve success, what are the challenges, and so on. So, and then I think there also the Congolese designer, Anifa Mvembu, who's doing 3D modeling of fashion. So I think that whole digital fashion world is also something that to me is really interesting. That people are creating, and I want to say they're not these non-fungible tokens, but it's almost like NFTs. Virtual fashion.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, South Africa has been really lucky compared with other parts of Africa in terms of development. The country is relatively developed. There's a rumor that when people say when people say in America, I'm going to Africa, and then you go to South Africa, they say that's fake Africa because that's really not the way Africa is. You know, it's really developed now, and so is the fashion curriculum. It's it ranks at par with what's obtainable in the biggest institutions in the world, like Parsons and Fate New York and Central St. Martin's and all of that. Now, I know that you're in 5 campuses in South Africa. Now, have you considered, having other campuses in other parts of Africa? And if so, where are you looking at right now?
Yeah, I think we certainly have considered that. Sure, and I would say it's flattering to be compared with the big institutions in the rest of the world. Though, I've my passion is also in education, so I've presented at conferences in design education in other parts of the world, and I often find the South African presenters are much more in touch with what's happening on the ground, whereas quite often the educationalists or people teaching design in other parts of the world are very removed from communities, from reality, from what's happening on the ground. So, I think we've been having conversations with various people in Africa. At this stage, I want to say I'm not always directly involved in those, but and I suppose, the reality is it would be easier if these were countries that had English as one of the languages rather than French. But yeah, it is definitely something we're looking at. And we also have looked at doing some collaborations with, for instance, we're having a conversation at the moment with the African Leadership University, who are based, if I'm not mistaken, in Rwanda and in Mauritius. We've also had a conversation going with Blue Crest about possibly doing collaborative projects, because this is also something we're really interested in doing, is doing some projects that involve students and people from outside of South Africa.
Where is Blue Crest? Where's Blue
Ghana?
Crest? Oh, okay, because it sounded quite familiar.
Yeah,
amazing. I hope you guys will look at coming to Nigeria. We're the most populous African nation in the world, and aside from that, how vibrant we are.
Absolutely. I didn't get to visit. In one of my previous positions, I was involved in printing ballot papers, and in fact, we did the presidential election for Nigeria, I would say probably about 12 or 13 years ago. I didn't get to visit, unfortunately, but heard a lot of good things, and a number of my colleagues have been from Nigeria. I've really enjoyed that communication. Nigerians are full of energy, and maybe I'm generalizing, and initiative, which is great.
Yeah. I saw a piece that you wrote about decolonizing education, particularly fashion education. Could you expatiate on that, because that's a word that has been flying around, the decolonization of education. Yeah. So could you just shed a little light on that?
Yeah, it's a big topic, and I want to say it's something we are looking at the moment in our courses, which most programs in South Africa, possibly in the rest of Africa, I'm not too sure, have been very orientated towards a Eurocentric approach to especially fashion education. And, I can even remembering back when I was a student, where I would often photograph fashion shows and things like that. People would, the aspirations were, I want to become this huge fashion name and, move to Paris, do the runway thing, have this whole, I want to say, life that is certainly very Eurocentric. And so a lot of the programs that we offer use examples from the rest of the world. and exclude, for instance, South America, Africa, Asia, Australia even. So the global South has a huge amount to offer the world, which is often not integrated into textbooks, into curricula, into classrooms. So in 2017, I was then president of the Design Education Forum of Southern Africa, which has a conference every 2 years. And that particular conference, the theme was decolonizing design education. And I think it was quite a challenge for all of us who'd been in education for a long time to step back and look at what we've been doing and acknowledge that we could and should be doing things quite differently. And so I want to say my PhD in education had been very much about knowledge, and often it's a matter of what knowledge is valued by a particular discipline. And once again, it's often the Eurocentric knowledge that is valued. So indigenous knowledge is not even considered. And my proposal was that design would benefit, or design education would benefit from decolonizing what was taught in the classroom, because it implies that you're going to bring multiple perspectives. And I think we all know that when we create designs, if we create design from a very narrow, and I often say to students, you're not designing for yourself. You need to consider that you're designing for somebody who could be completely different to you. And you need to be able to accommodate those multiple perspectives, or look at collaborating where you bring in multiple perspectives. And that could be community, your peers. You need to look at how do you collaborate, or at least try and think in different ways about things. And that's very much, to me, decolonization can be extreme, as in get rid of everything that's Eurocentric and replace it with Africa. But to some extent, that's also colonization.
Yeah. So sorry to cut in here, but do you think that is realistic, though? Like, do you think involving as many diverse people as, because we are a diverse world. I mean, millions and millions of tribes, thousands of tribes, rather, countries. So how diverse can the fashion curriculum be? How much of people from all over the world can you include in this curriculum?
Okay, sorry, you were breaking up a bit there, but I'm understanding that you're saying, is it realistic to say you're going to bring in everybody?
We look at things from the Eurocentric, like you put it, point.
Okay. Sorry, you broke up a bit there, but
yeah,
I think you're saying, and you're 100%
okay. Do you want to go over it again?
Ways,
okay. So what I was saying was, do I go over it? Do I go over the question again?
I think in a curriculum, you cannot do everything. And I mean, even we'll have students who go into the industry, and the industry might say, oh, but you didn't do this software. And we can only say, well, within 1 year or within 3 years, we can do so much. I agree with you. One can't actually touch on or bring in all voices. That would not be feasible. But I also think the modern trend in education is for students to bring their own voice. And we have a very diverse student population. So if we ensure that students from different backgrounds, different cultures are comfortable with bringing that into the classroom, then students can learn from each other, and we're not imposing, we're merely opening up the space and saying, Eurocentric is one way of doing things, but also look closer to home and look at local ways of doing things. Let's look at ways to do stuff in Africa. We ran a collaborative design project, or we run it every year. And I'll probably jump onto another topic, which was done online last year, and we'll do it online this year. We had over 500 students, about 80 lecturers, and we had guest speakers from all over the world. So this is one of the wonderful things with online education is we had, textile designers from Mozambique. We had fashion and creative arts people from Zambia, from Mauritius, from the UK. We had local companies who were involved in the project. And I think, no, we can't address everything and we can't teach everything. But I think we can open up that conversation and expose the student to things so that, and I think part of it is also for each person to acknowledge that their way of doing something is only one way of doing something. There are many other ways.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope I answered your question.
I don't know if you know. Yes, to a large extent, yes. I don't know if you know Bila Bandari. He came to the interview last week, I think, and he's the COO of the College of Fashion and Design in Dubai. Have you ever met?
I have not met with him. No, I think I've seen a YouTube video with him. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So he was called on to, he's usually a consultant in setting up fashion schools all over the world. And he said something, he was like, when I asked him if he had any intention of coming to Nigeria, and he said, well, if he was to come to Nigeria and set up a school, he won't set up a fashion school, a brick and mortar fashion school anymore. What he will do would be to set up a very seamless online platform, and then rent labs. Now, these labs will be in fashion schools, in your vicinity. Have you thought of that method of setting up other campuses of Inscape in other parts of Africa? Because the truth of the matter is that fashion education in many parts of Africa is still very rudimentary, very basic. I mean, you were just talking NFTs, you were talking 3D fashion. You know how Nigerians are. We're very, like you said, we're very innovative. Despite the economic and political terrain, designers are still going out there and learning these things online. I mean, thank God for online education. But the thing is, it would be great if, there were structured places where you could actually go and learn these things. So have you ever considered, having, like I know you have an online school, Inscape has an online school. So have you ever considered having like an online platform where African students from all over would come and, take a course and then practicalize their courses in labs all over Africa? Now, the problem I had with that arrangement is the fact that, these labs might not really be existing because, or even if they exist, they won't have up-to-date machinery and, digital. Yeah. So, but is that something that you might look at in the nearest future? I know it's a lot, but maybe you might just answer them in
No, and I mean, there are a lot of, I want to say there are a lot of modern educational theories, and especially about design, that say design education shouldn't happen in a university. It should actually happen in the community. So your teaching of students should take place possibly in industry or in communities that are actually doing things rather than in, and I want to say Inscape is certainly not an ivory tower, but, students are then in the safe higher education environment, and they don't really have contact with the real world as such. Obviously, with COVID, that is something that hasn't really happened. There are institutions that have set up labs on their campuses, and this is mostly in America, where the community can come in and actually work in those labs, do courses, learn from students. Students learn from the people who are doing things. So that's also a wonderful model. Is it, and I want to say, sure, it would be wonderful to have almost like, as you say, satellite labs that were equipped for students to do things in. Unfortunately, all countries have regulations relating to education. So, for instance, we as a South African accredited institution cannot even go across the border into Namibia and open a campus there and offer our existing programs. We would have to apply to Namibia for accreditation to be registered with their Department of Education. And so there's a lot of regulatory issues. Some institutions do get away with saying, here's an online course, and we'll come into your country and run some workshops and, teach the students, and then we're out of here. But I think that also is not an ideal situation and not a commitment from the institution. Will these things change in the near future? If you look at how so many other industries and aspects of the world have become way more global. People, I work from home 4 days a week. I could be in Nigeria working from home as long as there's Wi-Fi. People are doing these kind of things, but education is still very, very regulated and very locked into an existing system. Inscape, I think, is a private institution. We have the advantage of being more agile, for instance, than big public institutions with 40,000 students, where it takes 5 years just to change something in your program. We can do more innovative things. We're looking at incorporating, for instance, circular economy into all of our programs. We're looking at how do our students do projects that address aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals, because these are current concerns that the students have and that we have, and we need to be addressing. We can't wait 5 years before we start to look at this sort of thing. But I love the idea of those labs all over Africa. It would be extraordinary. But I think it's, on a practical level, it's quite a challenge. I think the one lady from, I'm trying to remember, was it from Zambia? Betty Bulongo from Black Forest Fashion. She's created a fashion incubator in Zambia, which works quite on those lines and sounds like really interesting. I think they also, with COVID, ended up having to step back a bit, but they were doing a lot of training in different areas, using local material, using local people, just really having an impact on very specific communities too.
Interesting. So we're going to be having, as a group, we're going to be having a talent contest soon. I feel that the world has not really seen, the amount of creative power from Nigerian illustrators. And we hope that this contest will, do that. We're looking at, collaborating with international fashion schools like yours to provide some sort of scholarship or mentoring for the winners. The scholarship might not necessarily mean you funding a winner's fashion education. It could be as little as having a 1 week course online, having access to a 1 week course in your school, and possibly mentorship from. I know that you have a lot of relationships with designers in your community, South African designers in your community. Probably having a mentorship session, a few days or a few hours a week for 2 weeks. Is this something that you can do?
Yeah, I think we should definitely have that conversation because, as you say, there are options there that we could look at. And, a mentoring program would also be wonderful. I'm trying to see, I think we've got one of our graduate students online as well, if that is Prince, who, we have a scholarship program that we run for our students where we encourage them to continue with their studies to do, for instance, honors with us, and then they lecture for us after that. So, we've got people on board who I'm sure would be interested. And as you say, we've also got short online courses which we could look at. Yes, please. Let's continue this conversation.
That will be amazing. That will be amazing. Like you said, we will continue the conversation. Dr. Sue, it was amazing having you on board. You've been amazing. You've been wonderful. You were even faster than I was in responding to emails. And I want to thank you for being so gracious. So gracious. So I don't know if anyone who is listening right now, who is watching, has any questions for Dr. Sue. Does anyone have any questions? Is Prince Malavi the graduate student you were referring to?
Let's see if...
Is Prince Malavi the graduate? I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right.
Yeah.
Malavi. Lavi. Is he?
My surname. I was rushing to download the app. So
okay,
yeah,
I think he's speaking.
Yes.
Okay, can we hear you, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. It would be great if you shared your camera.
Okay. Should I switch on the camera?
Yes, please.
Okay. I saw the invitation on Instagram, so I decided to let me just join and see what's happening.
Great.
Oh wow.
So Prince has just completed his honors degree, and he's lecturing a bit.
Sorry, I want to ask a question. Are honors the same thing as master's degree?
Not in South Africa. We have a bit of it's a postgrad. So you would do a 3-year degree, then an honors program, and then go on to a master's. But I have had students go straight into masters, especially in the UK, directly from degree. So it's a slightly different system.
Okay, awesome. So, Prince, you've gone off. I was about to ask you a question. So what do you do? Okay, you're back on.
Your microphone.
Yeah. You have to switch on your microphone. You have to switch on your microphone.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. So, are you based in South Africa?
Yes, I am, Victoria.
Okay. So, do you have like a label of your own already, or you're working in a fashion establishment?
I'm working on it. Yeah. For now, it's just trying to be more sustainable and coming up with projects that are sustainable.
Okay. But you work with a fashion label?
Would I?
Do you work with a fashion label, or you already have your own fashion label going on?
Yeah, I'm working on my own fashion label. But mostly I wanted it to be centered more on sustainability, and so far that's what I'm working on.
Well, I think sustainability is a word that, is thrown around these days to become, I don't know, politically correct. So when you say sustainable, what do you mean?
Upcycling. So I have this, which was inspired by my studies, like this whole denim carnation, where I upcycle denim and create new items with that denim. So increasing the lifespan of the denim itself instead of discarding it and disposing of it.
Interesting. So, Dr. Sue, are you saying that, Prince, would you be able to act as a mentor to one of our winners, if possible?
I would love to. Because I think this is a great initiative to get designers from across Africa to unite. And yeah, I think it's a great initiative. I would love to.
Amazing.
Cool.
I'm happy
Thank
with
you.
where this is going. Thank you so much. Dr. Sue, it's been wonderful having you. Prince, it's been wonderful having you. I don't know whether anyone listening has any questions for Dr. Sue or Prince, or you would want to do this, ask questions later. And Dr. Sue, do you have any questions for me?
I suppose just in terms of your collective, how did you get together, and who all is on board with your collective?
Okay, so during the pandemic, I had to kind of because I'm a fashion illustrator, and so I do a lot of teaching. And my classes were physical classes most of the time. I did a bit of online classes, but it wasn't major. So with the whole lockdown, I had to look inwards and create a curriculum for strictly online classes. And so I had this really enthusiastic, very excited to learn a new skill set of students. I was like, you know what? I think it's high time we just have a platform strictly for illustrators. So initially, I put together a platform called Fashion Illustration Naija. Now, I don't know if you know, Naija is the shortened form for Nigeria. So it was strictly for fashion illustrators, where we'll just, learn from each other and just share our work and all of that. And then I started the Industry Giants Talk, where we bring people in. So our first Industry Giants Talk guest was actually a fashion illustrator. But as time went on, we found out that other creatives were joining. We had pattern makers, we had fabric vendors, we had stylists, we had photographers. We had all kinds of fashion creatives coming in. So it didn't make any sense anymore to be Fashion Illustration Naija. So we had to change our name. This name was actually given to us by a member of the group, Shalom. So she was like, I think we should call ourselves the Fashion Collective Naija. And so that's how the name came up. And it's been a great ride. I have an assistant. His name is Shino, and he's listening right now. He's been amazing. He most of the time provides content, and we are 2 years strong now, and we hope to have collaborations that will empower our members. I'm very passionate about fashion education, because fashion education in Nigeria, unfortunately, is very rudimentary. And there's really no governing body. There is a governing body, but it really doesn't pay much attention to the curriculum. So when you compare the curriculum that is being taught now with what's happening abroad, it's not at par at all, which is the reason why I'm speaking to people like you to say, you know what, can we collaborate and have that knowledge shared here? Because Nigerians and innovation, and you know how I think the word is ginger. We're very alive. And I can just imagine what we will do with that knowledge, which is the reason why collaborations with people like you, with your school, is so important. So I am so glad that I've been able to speak with you today. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, great. Okay. Sounds wonderful. I think we need something similar in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, you could start it though.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely. Prince and I
yeah,
will have to have a conversation.
definitely, definitely. I'm glad I sparked a revolution in South Africa.
Yes.
All right. It's been great having you. I hope you will stay in the group, watch our developments. And I definitely will be buzzing you from time to time, asking for advice.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much. I'll have to let you go now.
Okay, no, that's been wonderful. Thank you. And yeah, if
Yeah.
anybody wants to have a look at our websites and all the rest, and if you need any extra information, there's also a really nice initiative. And I did one of the articles I was looking at. I'll just paste it in the, there's a sort of online magazine written by a lady and it's called Twig, which has really interesting articles on a lot of aspects of, and I think not only South African, but African fashion.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay. So
Cool.
are you typing the link?
Sorry.
Are you typing the link? Are you typing the link in the group?
Yeah, I have pasted it into the link, the group.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank
It's
you so
been
much, Sue.
fun. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right
Thanks,
then. Bye.
everybody, and goodbye.